very much for coming back tonight to the PigSty. Tonight we have been joined by Gutsick Gibbon, or if I'm allowed to, Erica. And yeah, we're going to get a wee bit more knowing about Erica and what she does with her paleontology and evolutionary biology. Is that right? There we go. Well, Gutsick, for the people, Erica, for the people who don't... Why is my phone fucked?
Oh, rip. F in the chat for the audio.
There we go. I have no idea what happened there. How's about that?
Are we good now, chat? Tell us.
You sure? No.
What do we know, audio?
You see, it's just been fucking with me since I moved to a different room.
Yeah, we're getting a little loud. My ears. Ooh, that is rough. Let's see. Okay, I'm good. Critical Cripple says I'm good. Thanks, Critical.
Yeah, how about me now? Am I okay now? Very quiet. Right, now if I'm going too much. Well, this is really annoying. This was sorted the other day. Dave Whitehaven! Hello? How about now?
Rest in peace. It's almost October, so everything's okay. Karen Biology was concerned about this being scary.
I'm still fucked.
My mom is just roasting you.
What? Absolutely brilliant. Right, hold on. I'm gonna try to take that off.
Take that off, and we will try now. How's about now, folks? Is that working now?
What do we know?
Do I need to go louder or lower?
Now mine's bad again.
Do I need to... That's very clear, but very quiet. Okay. How's about that, Dave? Okay, I've turned myself up. How's about that now? I do apologise about this, Erica. Hey, we got an okay from Porno.
Nice.
Both sound good now.
Very nice. Maybe a bit louder. Okay, much better. Very nice.
Much better. Right, perfect. Okay. Just a hair louder for me. Alright then, there you go. You have to be specific, don't you?
I know.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Right, now that I fucked everything up, Erica, please let everybody know who you are, where you are, what's going on in your channel, and I'm going to go and cry in the corner.
Oh god, no, don't punish yourself just yet. I'm happy to introduce myself. I'm glad to be here. I love coming on and having these kinds of conversations. My name's Erica. I go by Gutsick Gibbon on YouTube because I love hylobatids. Those are your gibbons and your cyanids and things like that. I'm currently getting my Master's of Research in Primate Biology, Behavior, and Conservation, or just Primatology, for those of you out there who like it short, sweet, and to the point. I am about a good probably fourth or maybe even a third into my master's thesis, writing that, and I am performing that on the pressures that act to give us monomorphic primates, and I can get into that later. It's not nearly as boring as it sounds. It's actually much cooler, I swear to God. I trust me, I can explain this in a fun way. And I have a YouTube channel here on the site where I bust a lot of creationism. I also talk about paleontology, evolutionary biology, and primates, of course, being interested in primatology. And that's pretty much my spiel. I very much enjoy those fields. I think that they are by nature very intrinsic to one another, and they lend themselves to some pretty sick science. So that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. Well, no, I first came across you when you were debating Kent Hovind, but what was that?
Oh, wow.
That was maybe 6 or 7 months ago or something like that. Was it maybe a wee bit longer? But the channel itself, you've been going for close to 2 years now, isn't it?
I think close to a year. I think this past, I want to say late April, early May was my year anniversary. So we've been going around for maybe closer to a year and a half. I'm not sure the specifics on that, but yes, certainly longer than when I was on chatting with with old Kent Hovind, the young Earth creationist of modern day debate. So he's a lot.
What I usually start with people as I ask them is, what brought you to the internet? What was it originally that got you started with the channel? Was it taking your studies and just having an outlet, or were you looking on the internet and saying, oh my god, who is this standing for truth guy, and I need to start a channel?
Well, I would be lying if I said that roasting, channels like Standing for Truth's channel had nothing to do with making my own channel. I used to bum around on the Debate Evolution subreddit, which, if you're into Reddit, it's just the Debate Evolution sub, where I was, you can find my post there under the same name. And I really enjoyed my time there. I was inspired to get on Debate Evolution because it all goes back to my goes back to a coworker that I had, and I talked about this recently on the internet in general. But I used to work as a veterinary assistant, and one of my coworkers was a vehemently vocal evangelical Christian who was very interested in letting people know that no, the Earth was actually very young, and no, humans are not apes, and this is all supported by the science. And of course, at this point in time, I already had finished my undergraduate degree. I think I was very close to finishing it, and I was like, that's really interesting because my minor is in anthropology. It's a subject I'm very, very interested in. I've been to Old Divide Gorge. I've seen many of the hominin fossils myself. And I picked up another minor in biology. My major is animal science. So I happen to know a little bit about the subject, and I think you're kind of super duper wrong on that. And we kind of went back and forth for a little bit at work, and I was like, how about we just grab coffee? So it proceeded to kind of evolve, so to speak, into a monthly coffee that we would get together, and we did that for about a year. And he would bring up all sorts of things that I myself had never really bothered to look into, like how is it do we know that radiometric dating truly is an incredibly viable, robust scientific methodology? How do we know that? How do we know that the hominins really are morphologic change over geologic time? How do we know the things that we know? And it gave me a great opportunity to really get in and dig into all of that, because he would ask me these questions that were rather in depth, and I was like, holy shit, I gotta inform this guy, because at the time he was planning on becoming a teacher, and I was like, someone's gonna stop him. Not from becoming a teacher, but from kind of proselytizing in this way. And that's what led me to the subreddit. And then when I was on the subreddit for long enough, I was like, I feel like I could reach more people with this, because God knows I've put in the work.
Yeah.
I could just put it into a video form, slap it on YouTube, and then that way people won't have to take the time to look all this stuff up like I did. They can benefit from the fact that I already looked it up. And then, it kind of evolved from there, and I've been bumming around on my channel ever since and getting to know some of the internet's YECs.
But you do your own artwork and all as well, don't you? Your icon, the monkey thing, that's all. You see, was that always just a hobby or something you did on top of the hominid stuff and on top of your studies, or just sort of doodling, or?
Yeah, doodling. Yeah, for a very short period of time, I flirted with the idea of getting into animation and art when I was in high school and early undergrad. And I've never really felt like I could take the time to really fulfill that and be an excellent artist, because that's all art is. Anyone can be a decent artist if you practice. I think there's inherent talent involved as well, which God knows I don't have.
You draw better than me.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, it's literally just practice. When you tell someone they're good at art, it's just because they've done it a lot, usually. But I was like, I feel like I myself am a very visual learner. And so I was like, I bet I could use some of these doodles to maybe help convey some of my ideas, right? Like some of the hypotheses that can be a little difficult to connect with on just a verbal level. So it's been really helpful. But yeah, I doodle like crazy. You can't find a notebook of mine from high school that isn't just covered in like dinosaurs and shit on the margin.
But you see, that's one thing that I do like about your videos, is the fact that they are visual, and that's why I think like you're 4,500 or something thousand in a year and a half, as you say. You've boomed, and you do really well because that information people not only want to learn it, but we want to be entertained as well. And the fact that you have the animation and stuff like that, it keeps it exciting. You know, and it keeps people coming back and wanting to hit the subscribe button, wanting to watch more. And you do learn. You know, I find myself that if I'm trying to learn a new subject or learn, you know, a particular thing or a new skill, I would watch things on it that would be entertaining, so that after maybe a couple of weeks or so, you've picked up the terminology, you've picked up things because you've had the context, you made a joke and this, that and the other. So then when you go to the actual studies, you move yourself up to the next level. If you want to dig that wee bit deeper, you know what this particular thing is. You know what that is because you watched some guy make a joke about it last week. You know, you have, and you remember that because of the entertainment factor. You know, it's not sitting down with a book and going, fuck, I have to learn it. You're learning it because it was funny. You're learning it because it was entertaining. And I have used your videos as a reference point to Manda when we're doing edit and stuff like her. So she is a science-based channel. She's climate science mainly, and climate change. And I've been saying, you know, go the entertainment route, and she's like, we just need the science. Just need the science. Like, people don't want just the science. You know, you have to draw them in ever so slightly. And I do think that you've taken a real good niche the way you have that with the animation. Does he have a name?
Oh God, the niche of the gibbon, the gibbon itself.
It's just the gibbon.
No, it doesn't have a name. I mean, it's kind of my own little, like, avatar persona, I guess. Someone insulted me greatly one time and asked me if it was my furry avatar. And I was like, cool, I guess I'll just get off the internet forever now. That's the meanest thing you could have said. The gibbon is not my persona, no. But, yeah, it's kind of just a way to, like, because I'm actually not that great at drawing people. You'd think that the drawing monkeys and apes, non-human monkeys and apes, would lend itself to drawing people, but I'm really not that good at it, and so I've always kind of put myself into the video by using the gibbon. So it does, you know, it's just the Gutsick Gibbon. It's just my persona. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that someone said to me very recently that science communication is a different animal entirely to science in general.
Yeah.
There are some really good scientists out there who are really bad science communicators.
Yeah.
So I think that it's, you know, if you want to be a good scientist, you could do so and still be for science communication, but it's always preferable, I think, to be able to transmit the information that you're working on, maybe in a very niche field, into a consumable product for people who maybe aren't as familiar with it.
Exactly.
You reach more people that way, and God knows climate science is one of those areas where we really need that to be digestible in a way that people can understand. And I think too, when it comes to climate science, there's a balancing act with that gloom and doom, saying this is really serious and we are seriously all going to die, with some hope tinged in there, like, listen, we can still manage to mitigate this somewhat, in order to get people to call to action, essentially.
Well, that's the average public. I find that we do have our own wee community here. You know, and we reach out with some channels like yourself and Digital Hammurabi and GE and stuff. You know, they have the big numbers because they've reached out, because they're entertainment and they're educational as well. You know, and we do have our small community here, as I say. But to reach outside that, most people go to YouTube for entertainment. They don't go to learn. You know, they'll go to a specific website, or they'll go to, you know, Courses Plus or something like that specifically to learn. But if you want them to, you know, to reach the masses and to get there, YouTube is a good platform if used correctly.
Oh, 100%. And you're right, it's a double-edged sword, because everyone's got an equal voice on YouTube, you know, considering like a baseline. And that means people, you know, you really do have to work to make sure that the information out there is correct, because as you know, there are a lot of young Earth creationists on YouTube, more than there probably should be, but there's flat earthers, there's, you know, anti-vaxxers, there's a ton of people who just really don't get the science, and don't seem to care to get it, who get on here, and, you know, they don't garner no views. People do, like, check out their content, and I think it's up to people who are interested in that area, in communicating science, to kind of mitigate that in their own way if they are capable.
Well, speaking of which, you know, we've made the joke twice already. We've mentioned his name. People like Standing for Truth. I see his always coming up again, and I think he released a video the other day saying you were retiring, you know, and...
Oh, yeah, Standing and I are not on great terms.
No, there's a back and forth there, you know, there's a back and forth. Is there a particular reason? Did he come to you and debunk you first, or did you find him and debunk him first?
Well, Standing is a really interesting case. So he's very much so there's an interesting, again, evolution there. Standing used to be very much of a Kent Hovind kind of loyalist, so to speak. Now, there are a ton of creationists out there who kind of like what Kent does, but they don't necessarily like all of the arguments that he uses. There's some weird overlap there with Answers in Genesis, where Answers in Genesis is like, yeah, we're cool with the young earth creationism thing, but you're also using some really bogus arguments. They're super outdated. And to the point where AIG's got like a whole column on their website where they're like, hey, don't use any of these arguments.
Yeah, see that.
Anyone you bring those up to. You know, the classic, are you aware that there are clams in the closed position on the top of Mount Everest? It's like, yeah, Ken, we were all aware of that back in the 70s, and I wasn't even alive.
Yeah, his slides haven't changed at all.
No. And that's the thing about Kent, is that you'll see a steady progression too, where he's been swapping out legitimate arguments for rhetoric. So he's using less and less cogent, you know, this is something that I think is literally true, like the clams or the flash frozen mammoths or whatever. And he's changing that out for like references to the Green Mile, like these weird, almost vague concepts that he can gesture at. Well, could you get a dog as big as Texas? Rather than legitimate arguments. And I think that's kind of why Standing and his sort of gang are moving more and more away from Kent and his ilk for their own brand, which is to say they're adopting the Nathaniel Jeanson, your kind of neo-creationists that are supposedly trying to come at this from a genetics supports us angle, which is absurd. You know, anyone can take 20 minutes and hop online and see where Nathaniel Jeanson's work fails on just about every level, which, by the way, is why he refuses to have open dialogues with anyone that isn't on his terms. But yeah, so basically the way I got connected with Standing is when I debated Kent. Standing loves debate. He was like, okay, here's a new person on the scene. If I do say so myself, I got some pretty good feedback on that Kent discussion, and I think Standing was kind of like, here's a person that I can kind of go up toe-to-toe against, see how I fare. So he reached out to me through James on Modern Day Debate and was like, hey, I want to debate her. And when he did that, we had a conversation, and he subsequently made more and more videos sort of in my direction, and I was kind of like, this is a lot of easy content. While Standing and I are not on, again, we're not on great terms right now, he has always been, up until very recently, incredibly civil with our interactions, which is very different from the creationists that you tend to go toe-to-toe with on the internet, who can be very vitriolic. They get personal really quickly, and their arguments are super gish-gallopy. Standing was better at that than most others, but as you've seen, we've kind of had something of a we're breaking up. We're having a falling out right now.
What is it he always says that drives my fucking head away and drives me? Homozygosity or something. As soon as I hear that word, I just switch off.
Yep, your created heterozygosity. He loves that. He loves taking terms from the books that he reads and using them like gratuitously in casual conversation. Paleo experts, that comes from Contested Bones. Replacing Darwin has given him the term rescuing devices, which, he peppers that into every sentence that he can, which is incredibly brutal for anyone who listens to it, because imagine calling radiometric dating a rescuing device. Like, radiometric dating was a thing probably before Standing was born. And it's a science that billions upon billions of dollars worth of fossil fuel industries rely on working every single year.
I don't know much about it. It's not particularly my field or anything like that. I'm not going to claim any knowledge. But when it comes to, radio decay and radioactive dating and things like that, they just lump everything together with the carbon. Anybody who's been in the community long enough and seen these arguments, you can see, right, I've debunked this once. There's the reason why it was wrong. Okay, this, that, and the other, and oh my goodness, I'm still seeing videos on Piltdown, man. It's like, holy fuck, people, these...
I know. Oh, wait, hold on. Speed, yes. Speed knows. Speed is in the chat. He is also familiar with standing. Yes, standing is awful at Gish galloping. I'm just saying he's better at it than Kent is. Yeah, he's, again, the bar is somewhat on the floor and has been for quite some time. But yes, yeah.
Yeah, Kent had his moment. He had his little peak, and I think what happened to him is he had a big enough following that he realised he could make money out of it, and as you said, he's now moved from information to rhetoric to keep the people there, to keep the money coming in, because what the fuck else is that man gonna do?
Oh my god, I know. The thing is, when you get put in jail for like tax fraud for several years, that really does kind of put a damper on your income options. So he has seen this opportunity and really seized the day on it, to his credit, I suppose. But yeah, Kent has made a lot of kind of enemies even within the creationism world. He's not very big on any of the technical arguments. He wasn't in the beginning either, but way less so, as you said. Now it's all rhetoric with him.
Well, on that topic of arguments, what is the worst that you've seen from either Standing or Kent or AIG? Is there one particular that you see all the time that is just, like when I see young Earth creationists and people like this using misusing the third law of thermodynamics and shit like that, that really annoys me. I don't know why, but it triggers the shit out of me, and it just But is there anything like that in your particular, argument set that really gets you going?
Yeah, there were a couple. You've got the ones that are biggies for me that are like, no, that's fundamentally wrong, like radiometric dating doesn't work. And when that happens, usually I'm like, all right, show me a single example of radiometric dating not working, so to speak, and I will show you where this was either performed by a creationist on rock where it was essentially not supposed to be performed on. I've seen creationists try to suppose that radiometric dating doesn't work because it got a weird date on like a recently erupted volcano, which, anything about radiometric dating, you can't date something that just happened. It has to be at least several thousand years old, because what radiometric dating does is it measures a ratio, right, of parent and daughter, like isotopes essentially, and if you date that before anything has decayed, you're gonna get a wild wonky number because there's nothing to measure, right? It's like trying to measure zero. So you have to wait until there's at least some decay before you can actually begin to get a reading on that, and then you can start to get accurate results. It's also the same reason why you can't date like sedimentary rock or metamorphic rock. It has to be igneous because that's volcanically reset rock, so to speak. So those ones drive me crazy because it's always creationists incorrectly dating rock and then saying it doesn't work. Or sometimes they even date rock like that's near uranium
You're
deposits.
actually saying they misrepresent the data. Are you?
Oh, I know. It's a wild fucking concept. It's a wild concept. That one annoys me, like on a general scale. I have a lot of mini ones within human evolution that really piss me off though, because that's the area that I know very well. And the one where the Laetoli footprints were made by modern humans because the authors of the original paper, Mary Leakey, said they looked remarkably human. Thus, therefore, they must have been modern humans, even though there's been a biomechanics study that places them as, I kid you not, perfectly intermediate in weight bearing to a modern chimpanzee and a modern human, which is incredible. It's an excellent study done by the Royal Society. That one pisses me off. Another one that makes me mad is that there are no transitionals within human evolution.
Everything's transitional. But in saying that, I'm 37, and obviously you're a wee bit younger than me. But there is certain things that, from my point of view, and growing up, even in the scientific field and things like that, possibilities of this, that, and the other. And as science changes, it does change. So we've grown up in this sort of idea of where is the transitional species. But, we've come to the point now where we just realize everything's transitional.
Yes, 100%. That's the thing, right? Is that you understand in this conversation that like there is transitional species in the sense of like what we mean when we say we've got species A, species B, and we are looking for the organism that is a perfect ratio of basal to derived traits in between those two species. That would be your perfect mosaic. But conceptually, you are 100% right. Everything's transitional all the time because nothing is static. Even organisms that exhibit stasis aren't really exhibiting true stasis. They're still responding to their environment, still favoring certain traits because the environment doesn't remain static. So you're absolutely right. Science changes, and if you're a creationist, all science is allowed to change except for evolutionary science and paleontology. When those fields change, it's because they're fundamentally flawed in their eyes.
Yeah, I think they stopped in around the 50s or 60s. They just stopped listening to papers. That was it. Yep. You know, no, you're wrong, so we're just going to throw all that out the window. You've got it right in the 50s, so we can pick on you and say that it's wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's when you got, like, Morris coming out with the Genesis geology concept where he's like, no, we can still rescue this thing.
The embryo drawings as well is another one that they bring up an awful lot. Like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but he drew different drawings of embryos and there were depictions, but they're still used in the books because they get the point across. You know, we've admitted that they're wrong in what they are, but, you know, they get the point across. Like,
well, yeah, there's misconceptions too with Haeckel on how he handled that initially. Haeckel gets a really bad rap for something that really wasn't all that dishonest when you actually look at the context of which those drawings were released. So, but that's the classic gimmick of creationists, right? They'll put out Piltdown Man or Nebraska Man, and then they will neglect to point out that it was indeed anthropologists who figured out that these specimens were not what they were proposed to be by laymen or earlier anthropologists. So, I mean, Piltdown, as you know, was a human skull with a filed orangutan jaw, and Nebraska Man was, I think it was an entelodont tooth, like a pig's tooth. So, both times it was paleoanthropologists who were like, hold on a second, wait, let's get a closer look. It wasn't like creationists were the ones who were trailblazing this.
And again, look at the time and when it was placed. You know, our information, our technology for actually analysing these things a lot of it was based in just visual. You know, we couldn't go so in and we couldn't take a three-dimensional scan and go, that doesn't fit up. You know, it was just looking at it, and if it matched up and you could get by, you know, you would take a few steps up the ladder more so than what you would now.
Oh, totally. I mean, you look back at the likes of Carolus Linnaeus, right? He, the father of taxonomy, and when he was trying to place humans, when he was trying to place all life, the way that he did it, the way he decided where life went on the tree, was by suites of morphologic characteristics. And when he was trying to figure out where humans fit, he is quoted, and I can't give you the exact quote, I could pull it up, but it's he's quoted as essentially saying, like, I'm really about to piss off a lot of theologians because there's nowhere else to put humans but with the other hominoids. Like, if we're doing it just by suites of morphologic characteristics, we're apes, and we're nested within the catarrhines, and we're nested within the haplorhines and the primates, all the way up the ladder, and we're just physically no different than anything else. And when genetics came out, it was a real slap in the face because everyone was like, okay, fine. So we're apes, but we're very special apes. And when genetics came out and was like, actually, when you're looking at coding base pairs, you're 98.8% similar to a chimp. And so everyone was like, oh, crap, that's really similar. So what is it that makes us so different? And primatologists ask this question a lot. And what we've really found out, or what I've, I guess, picked up just by observation, by hanging around with a lot of primatologists, is that humans, we don't really do a lot of stuff that's like wholly novel. We just do things in weird ways. We express basal characteristics in strange ways. And Robert Sapolsky, the big baboon guy, he has done some really incredible work with behavior of baboons. And he was like, yeah, you can categorize human behavior into 3 categories. Stuff that's identical to the stuff other animals do, stuff that's what other animals do, but a little bit different, and stuff that's wholly unique. And the wholly unique stuff is like 1% of 1%. We just do things on big scales, and so it all seems a lot more impressive.
Well, that's it. You know, if a monkey picks up a stick and uses it to poke down a hole to get some ants or something out of the top of it, okay, we use a digger. You know, we dig a hole, we get down there, we've moved on a wee bit further, but the actual idea of the thing, you know, the movement, the thinking, it's just an extension of that and slightly deeper thought, so to speak.
Oh yeah, and I mean there have been some really interesting studies out there. I recommend for like laymen, if you're just not into like reading papers or anything like that, any of the work by Franz de Waal. He writes excellent books on the subject of, all right, well, where do humans fit in and how are we all that different? And he does it from a perspective of, he's looking at all of these other animals, specifically primates, and saying, isn't it kind of weird that they do all the stuff that we do? They're empathetic. They appear to have some kind of at least very basal theory of mind when we're looking at the monkeys, and something that's a lot more like us once you get up into the higher primates.
What's his name again?
Franz de Waal.
I think, did he not release a book last August? I have downloaded it and not read it yet. And the front of it's all psychedelic and trippy looking, and it's about the evolution of the brain, I think.
Maybe. I don't know. He's written a lot.
Yes, he's written a lot. But I remember following down a rabbit hole because someone else mentioned him once. And this was around June or July. And he had a book coming out in August, and I pre-bought it. And it's on my phone. I haven't read it yet. I think the cover was all psychedelic. It's about the evolution of the brain. But he's been recommended a few times to me now.
Yeah, I really recommend him a lot. He his seminal work has been with bonobos, so Pan-Peniscus, the sexy apes, the ones that solve everything with sex, basically. They're matriarchal. They are slightly smaller than chimps, but for all intents and purposes, they're equally as related to us. I think it's like 1% difference with them. But yeah, he was the first guy to come out and say, all right, you know, the bonobos up until that point had this reputation for being
penis fencing.
Yeah, like, well,
that's the first time I heard of bonobo monkeys was penis fencing.
I mean, right? It's actually insane. They're also the only ones to engage in face-to-face intercourse. Like they have sex face-to-face. They use sex to diffuse situations. And Franz de Waal was the first one to come out and be like, okay, there's another side to humanity that we're not considering here. Let's look at the bonobos. And then he was also the one to say, maybe they're not quite as nice as we think, because even though they occupy a much more cooperative branch of our family tree when compared to the chimpanzees, they can still be pretty violent when they kind of feel like it. I mean, there are some very odd tales. Even just because it's a female in charge doesn't mean that ripping the testicles off of a conspecific is any nicer, right? So it's a whole weird deal looking at our closest relatives and what we share with each and every one of them and how we're different. I find it incredible that a person can look at the likes of any of the great apes or any primate, actually. Like even going down to the lemurs, you can see in their little hands how they manipulate tools and things around them, just how much we share with them. And then you can look at a human and be like, nah, this is something that's totally different.
See, I find the actual evolution of humans really fantastic. Now, you know, I'm too late in life and I more went down the physics field. Strangely enough, when I did my A-levels, I got an A in my biology and a B in chemistry, physics and maths, and ended up going down the physics route and just was like, I don't care about biology, I just fuck it. I didn't like my teacher, he was an asshole, even though it was my best subject, you know. But the human evolution, the last time I had this chat with Nathaniel, if you know from Divine Disbelief.
Yes.
Sort of specialises in that field as well, and we went off on a complete rant. But one specific thing I wanted to ask you, because you have a video about it, is I always grew up thinking, well, not sort of grew up as a young age, but you know, in mid-teens and stuff like that, the stoned ape theory.
Oh yes.
You know, it was very prominent. You know, around whenever I was growing up, this was a definite thing because I can't remember exactly the specifics of it, whatever. But you know, there was a giant boost in our brain capacity. You know, there was a giant sudden growth in our brain capacity and the way it was wired and stuff. And they were like, they were fucking eating mushrooms. That's what it was. Fucking eating mushrooms. Yeah. You know, for the people who haven't seen the video, what was what is its stance now on the stoned ape theory?
Yeah, so the stone date theory is something that is really, really fun, and I really wish that there was sufficient support to propose it as anything more than something that maybe happened and assisted in things. But a lot of the problems with the stone date theory come from the fact that when we start to see this explosion in brain case size, humans weren't as omnivorous, like we weren't eating very much meat, and Terence McKenna's idea was that the way we were getting these mushrooms, psilocybin, that's psilocybin, yes?
Psilocybin, or whatever. Yeah, one of them words.
Yeah, psilocybin. The way that we were getting these psilocybin mushrooms was they tend to grow in cow patties. And so his theory, his hypothesis was essentially that you've got these bands of hominins, and they are following these herds of prey animals that they will then kill and consume. And in that traveling nomadic lifestyle of following them around, they are exposed to these cow pats, they eat the mushrooms that grow within them, and then they just trip, right?
Yeah,
but the
new brain connections and all that sort of thing. Now, personally, as I say, I did like it, but you have to take into a time when it's coming out. I think there was a lot of projection as well. Coming out of the 60s and 70s and music like that, it makes you think different things.
The timing is just off. Now, what I said at the end of the video, if memory serves, it's not like that would have been something that was impossible. I mean, chimpanzees, primates today, I said chimps, but really more than just chimps do it, eat fermented fruit sometimes just for the hell of it.
Yeah, we've all seen them YouTube videos. The one of the raccoon in the brewery is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's insane. And dolphins will intentionally pass around pufferfish to get high off of the venom.
I've seen that. Yes.
So we're animals, and sometimes if we eat something or are exposed to something, or like, that made me kind of feel weird, and I was kind of into it, then they'll just kind of do it again. So I don't think that one could say that no hominins were ever getting high. I mean, you can still incorporate that kind of into the idea. I just don't think that it was responsible for the explosion in brain case size that we had. I think more likely is
protein intake.
Higher protein intake, yes, and a selection for cognition due to sociality. So, you start having this heavy selection for cooperation as we're coming down from the trees. It's a huge benefit to be able to have these communication systems that you don't have to be in the line of sight of someone to get a message across.
Yeah.
So gestures and things like that are great, but what's better than being able to shout and your buddy who can't even see you knows what it is you're trying to say. Warning conspecifics, finding food, all sorts of things that language, or at least a more sophisticated vocal repertoire, is going to help you out with. So you're basically seeing this heavy cognition selection from all angles, like almost, I would say almost around Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, Gautengensis,
all
those
them
guys.
Big words.
Yeah. Well, you're early Homo. If you say it like that, though, people still laugh.
No. I get no. It's great that you do that because it's there and it's natural and you know it already. So it's just that's what I'm saying. This is entertainment. You've heard these words. We know it. I now know. I have to look them up. Whenever I first started my Discord like a year ago, I used to get up in the morning and look up a different Homo and then send it. I was like, guess this one and guess that one. And do you have a favorite? Maybe not Lucy's my favorite or anything like that. But is there a Homo that really stands out at you that maybe needs more research into it or anything like that?
Oh my god.
I'm going to say this wrong depending on where I'm from, but when I was growing up, the Denovians or the Denisovians or Desovians, they had just been found, in and around that, and that's something that's always caught my mind and would be something interesting to, if I had a favourite, they would be my favourite, so to speak.
Oh yeah, Denisovans is awesome. I mean, the interesting thing is thanks to genetics, we know that there are quite a few hominins that we have zero remains for. We see their ghost lineages in our own genetics and in the genetics of the likes of Denisovans and in the likes of Neanderthalensis. And so, any time that you've got sort of a blank in the fossil record, the hope is that we'll soon run into that individual or that species. Denisovans has had some really interesting history behind it. We now, I believe, have a jawbone attributed to it from Tibet, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So I would love to see more of Denisovans. My interest, because I'm more primatology angled, I'm very interested in the early half of human evolution, sort of the selective pressure that set the stage for genus Homo. So I really like seeing, all right, which one of our Miocene apes is most likely going to contribute to humanity down the line. We have the likes of Oreopithecus. This is a genus that was very potentially like experimenting with more bipedality. We see a reduction in their canine teeth, and they're in the right location. So I would love to get more from Oreopithecus. But again, that's not really for sure in the human lineage. Within the lineage of humanity, quote unquote, and I'm very much, I want to warn people out there against creating like a march of progress, because none of the hominins that we have going past probably Homo heidelbergensis, we know for certain are in the human line. People are very quick to want to be like, oh, Lucy is one of our relatives. But the reality is all of the primate family tree and all of the tree of life, to an extent, is our relatives. I mean,
that's one thing I was going to bring up and say is whenever you're looking back, it's not that picture that we all see, you know, the 5-6 steps from the ape to the man playing the computer, you know, and now they've stuck another one at the end with the hunched man on the computer. It's, you know,
yeah.
It's not that picture. If you look at it, it's more, you know, it's an A4 page and there's a bit up there and a bit down there. It's like, that's my great uncle and that's his cousin and that's, you know, we're all related in like a wide web, not in a direct line straight back.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. And that goes all the way up until, you know, we can confirm things with or without our genetics. The hope is that we'll eventually get a much better representation in paleogenomics of the hominins. BrainBug said in the chat that their favorite is Ardipithecus ramidus, and of the hominins, Ardipithecus ramidus is actually my favorite as well. I love the Ardipithecus ramidus and Kadaba. That's my favorite genera just because this is our first species in the lineage, the series of lineages of upright walking, probably tool-using family members of ours that kind of for sure matches all of the characteristics for an upright, intelligent early hominin. We've got a brain case that's higher than chimpanzees, reduction in canines, but because my thesis, as I said earlier, is studying monomorphism, that is to say when males and females present the same morphologic characteristics, thus likely indicating a monogamous pair-bonded lifestyle, Ardipithecus ramidus is the first member of our kind of great apes, our hominoids, that exhibits that pattern. So males and females both have big canines, but they're the same size. The body size is the same in males and females, which indicates that we're seeing pair bonding. That's another one of those things that for a long time was thought to be a human-only thing. You know, that only humans were capable of forming these complex relationships of mating for life and things of that nature. Of course, everyone just ignored gibbons, but within sort of the human evolution route, Ardipithecus ramidus is a great candidate for like the kind of lovey-dovey hominins. I don't know. I like the concept behind that you've got these pair-bonded, upright walking, tool-using primates with still relatively small brains roaming around the savannah in teams of two. It's very cute to me. I love Ardipithecus.
No, well, the idea of that, you know, it does go down to the whole lovey-doveyness, as you say, of it. You know, it's just nice to think of a nice couple holding hands walking into the sun, you know. What are we doing tomorrow, honey? Lying out at the lake and maybe catching some fish. It's a beautiful day, you know. It is very picturesque sort of scene, like.
Oh, yeah, well, particularly too under the lens of the Australopithecines, which are like the complete opposite. I mean, the Australopithecines, for all intents and purposes, look to be very polygamous. These guys were just mating with anything that moved, if their body size dimorphism is anything to go off of, it's such an interesting thing. The Ardipithecus was the first one to me where I was like, wait a second, we've been here before. You know, we've had this kind of mating system in our family tree, and then it went away for a while. So what's up with that? And it kind of was a wake-up call for me that within the lens of human evolution, you can gain things and then you can lose them too if they're not beneficial for that given specific case. It's not this eternal march of progress always getting better. It's what's the best for your environment, which is why we see a relative reduction in brain case size, or at least a reduction in the trend of growing brain cases in like the likes of Homo naledi, who is kind of a bit of a lunkhead for the time period we find it in, you know, or Homo floresiensis, who is also seeing this heavy reduction in brain case size if we're assuming a Homo habilis or Homo habilis-like ancestor who ends up on this island, and then there's not enough to go around, so the smaller you are, the better chance you have at surviving, then you see this overall reduction in body and brain size. In any other context, that would be a ridiculous thing to select for if you've already got this massive brain and an imposing stature. But when you find yourself on an island, all of a sudden the things that you thought were positive become very negative.
Seeing that small animals get big and big animals get small when put in isolation, like it usually flips, or you know, in the medium out in the middle, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, Floresiensis inhabited this island with dwarf elephants and giant rats.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. But you know, Ramidus, Ardipithecus ramidus falls into that same category where it's like, we see this, or not the same category as Floresiensis, but the same general concept where it's like evolution is going to select for what's the best in that moment. So even though we probably saw pair bonding, again, inferring pair bonding from a monomorphic stature and monomorphic canine size, you can't always do that. Keep that in mind. But if we do indeed infer that, then you've got a lot of the things that are unique to human in pair bonding and cooperation that appear really early go away for the Australopithecines and then come back for Homo sapiens, which is very interesting and wild to think about. I like the concept of this roller coaster where it's like, you know, what are you going to get is completely dependent on where you are and when you are.
You see, you know, one thing that I've thought about is, again, making a reference point back to the line and the way everything's connected. You know, I have a crossbreed. I have a Jack Russell cross with a wee Staffy. He's 16 April past, so he's coming up in 17. He's my first dog, so I love the bones of the fucker, right? And if we had the body of him dead and we had the body of a Jack Russell, we would be able to tell, because we're of this time, that they were mated, you know, and they had this and all. But not to say that this particular mix of a dog will continue on and have a line. Now, there is other dogs out there that's it's a particular mix, like Labradoodles and stuff like that. You know, it's one of them particular mixes. But you could have a dog up the street mate with another dog up the street and create a complete random breed of a dog that's never existed, and that's the one that's fossilized, you know. And the fact that there's so many of them around, back in the day, way back in the day, it wasn't just us humans. The only one, I think, now, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but Neanderthalensis, or Neanderthals as most people would know, and what we have now is the Homo sapien, or whatever you want to call it, we have genetics for both of them, so we can actually tell there was crossbreeding between the two.
Oh, yeah.
Way back in the day, considering that there was, you know, we're taking two, say for talk's sake there was 10. Well, 1 and 2 had sex, and 8 and 9 had sex, and then 9's baby had sex with that baby, and you've got a completely different line. You know, it may have only existed for a certain period of time and then died out 4 or 5 generations. You know, this is why when we look back, there are cousins, there are great aunts and uncles. They're not a direct lineage, because if there were so many of us around, we are going to crossbreed. You know, it's been proven that it does happen.
No, you're 100% correct. We also
I love you. You've told me I'm right about 7 times tonight. Is everybody paying attention? Manda, are you paying attention?
Well, listen. I love it when people pay attention and know this stuff. I love to hear that, you know, in your independent work and your independent study of this, that you pick it up and you commit it to memory, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, I find this stuff fascinating, and I know I shouldn't be, but I'm indirectly very flattered when people are interested in the same stuff that I'm interested in. So when someone's like,
I'm not a weirdo. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Someone's like, oh, I think it's so cool that humans and Neanderthals interbred, and I'm like, and you're right, because it is really cool.
Yes, exactly. Science, bitches, science.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. I love it. I think it's amazing. I'm very much crossing my fingers for we're maybe gonna get lucky and also get some genetics from Homo floresiensis. We've tried drilling into some of the teeth and getting some DNA from the cores of the teeth, but It's not worked just yet. I think it's because the drill gets too hot and denatures the DNA.
Breaks it down.
And some people have also proposed that the core isn't the best place to get it. It's actually the cementum of the tooth. So I'm very much hoping that we will try again and get some genetics from Homo floresiensis, because that would really help us out with the family tree and knowing where that species belongs. Because one of the big mysteries with Homo floresiensis is how the hell did it get on that island? There wasn't a land bridge when floresiensis was there,
yes.
right? And even if you clock it backwards to the oldest remains that we have of floresiensis, there still wasn't a land bridge. So the question is, all right, how did floresiensis get there? Is it possible that floresiensis was capable of sailing? Because we know Homo erectus was capable of sailing. Well, probably not, because of the brain case size and the sophistication of the tools that we find there don't indicate that that's a very likely possibility. But the interesting thing is, we also find stegodon, the pygmy elephants, on Flores as well when there wasn't a land bridge. So it's like, we know that these two animals that decidedly weren't sailing managed to make it there. So how did they get there and when did they arrive? And by getting the genetics of Homo floresiensis, we might be able to place when it arrived on Flores, and considering floresiensis has a close relationship with these pygmy elephants, ecologically that might lend us at least some support on a minimum date of when we get stegodon there as well. So it's this cool deal where it's like, the more we find out about hominins, the more we can also find out about the ecological systems that they are a part of, which I think is just wildly cool.
One of the things that I always find is very cool, and I don't know if people know, I don't know if it freaks them out or whatever, it's one of them factoid sort of things, is they use genetic timing to check back whenever we started wearing clothes, and the reason that they can start telling when we wear clothes, you know where I'm going with this, is because the mites of the crabs that attach to types of animals like chimps is the same closer genetics to the type that we would have for genital crabs and things like that, and because of our pubes and stuff, the hair is similar, and they use it and they match the genetic timing, and that's how they can tell that when we started wearing clothes.
Yeah, the pubic lice thing is alarming, just because the way for that to have jumped species would have required some level of intimate closeness. And the question is, which one of our ancestors was getting close enough to a gorilla to acquire its pubic lice, and which was getting close enough to a chimpanzee to acquire its head lice. So it's, our general pelage.
Again, putting the fact forward that there's crossbreeding going on. There's genetic lines that are going to run and die. And another one I find quite interesting going down the line of genetics is the herpes. Yes, the herpes that we get in our down there is closer related to the monkey one, but when the monkey one came into us, the herpes in our lip, that position was already taken, so they had to migrate south, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's some interesting stuff with herpes B and the macaques too. Particularly given that the macaques that carry herpes B, they're rhesus macaques. So these are eastern monkeys, and exactly the fact that you're talking about there, right? Like this virus herpes B evolved somewhat in tandem with macaques, which is why when we get it, classic of zoonotic diseases, it can kill us, but it doesn't tend to kill them. And as a fun side note, that works in reverse too, because we as humans are far more likely to survive the likes of tuberculosis than a chimp is. They don't do well with respiratory illnesses. For whatever reason, we are, hominins are particularly robust when it comes to surviving lung stuff. Which is why, interestingly enough, people were really concerned when the current pandemic virus, I don't want to get you demonetized, but
I'm not monetized yet, don't worry, only 800 subs. Hit the subscribe button, yeah.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button, guys. Yeah, when coronavirus, first was coming on the scene, primatologists were kind of worried, because they were like, if this is capable of jumping species from, a bat to a human, who is to say that it's not going to be capable of jumping from a human into another primate? And given it's a respiratory illness, that would not be great for them. So,
So, as you talk about that and how we're talking about jumping back and forth, my mind's going mad here, because I really, this excites me, this is fun, and lots of things that I've watched and read up on and all. And there was another one that I've read up on is they may have some genetic material from Denisovan because they've traced more Asian people have them in their genetics than more, and if you go more Europe, you have more Neanderthal, which just does prove that whenever you go into a new area, whatever, I can't remember you'll tell me, whatever species of particular hominid that exited Africa, I know that there's an African version and there's a European version. You know, they're both basically the same, but they're named differently, but they're both very, very close to being similar. I can't exactly remember what it was, but you can see, looking through the lines of where our descendants have come from, certain things have stuck around, and it's from the areas of that, you know, what was populated in that time. Whenever that main hominid came out of Africa, it would come to an area and go, right, that guy does really, really well, and I'm fucked because it's cold, so I'm gonna steal some women and have some babies, and evolution and, you know, natural selection comes in, and, you know, we become a mesh together. We sort of steal their genetic advantage that they have when we move into the area, making us adaptable, but also giving us the advantage to wipe out.
Oh yeah, well, and you know, if by chance anyone in the comments or you yourself remember, I have a video on the domestication of dogs, and
I love that story. Domesticated twice.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that they domesticated themselves, right? Like humans, it's not looking like humans intentionally like sought out canids, and we're like, speaking of canids, I've got one right here. It's not like we intentionally sought them out and we're like, yes, let us incorporate these dogs against these wolves against their will into our sort of social system.
It just became sort of like a buddy thing. You know, these fuckers are throwing bones over their shoulders, you know, and things like that, and us humans are very, very just chuck shit over our shoulder and not care.
Oh, yeah, we were very much into this whole idea of like, wait a second, when we've got these dogs around, we can tell when other bigger, meaner animals are coming because the dogs start freaking out. And they were like, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a good idea, maybe we keep them around. If we feed them, they stay, and if they're mean, then we'll just kill them. And so that's kind of what it's looking like happened, because we find these progressively more Canis familiaris looking dogs appearing in the stead of the more wolf-like canids that we find living in proximity with humans as we descend from approximately 36,000 years ago to now. And the interesting thing is, the reason I brought it up is because you can time that pretty well too with the extinction of the Neanderthals. So it's very much looking like dogs were at least Pat Shipman. She proposes this hypothesis in her book The Invaders, but it's very much looking like dogs played a role in the extinction of Neanderthals, because if you're a Neanderthal, you're shorter, you're stouter, and you're better at throwing, but you see these lankier hominins with better tools and like little mini wolves that just do whatever they say. You're just not going to fare as well. But the jury's still kind of out on whether we, you know, necessarily killed the Neanderthals, outcompeted them, or bred them out of existence. No one's really 100% sure how that hashed out.
Yeah, I watched a study one time, or I watched a documentary one time where they found what they think is the last surviving. Obviously, they're making, you know, I'm inverting commas here, but it's in and around a very close time period where Neanderthals died out, and it was in a cave. Oh, I can't remember where the fuck it was, but it was in a cave right at the end of the, you know, on the ocean. Begins with G. Can't remember what it was, but the timing, it was definitely, if not one of the last generations, you know, of the Neanderthals, and there was 5 or 6 in the, and it's, I don't know, I'm rambling now, I've went off on a tangent.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know the name of the settlement myself, but if memory serves, it's like far North European, and it's almost like in this little pocket up by itself.
I can fucking see it in my head. I can see a picture of it with the waves crashing against it in my head, but can't think of the fucking name. Like.
It very much looks like the place you would have a last stand.
Yeah. Yeah.
If memory serves, if we're thinking of the same place. I mean, Neanderthals, one of the recent interesting, you guys have probably all seen this if you at all keep, sorry I just hit my mic, if you at all keep track of the ant flit. But very recently they found that Neanderthals were pretty capable with knots, like that they were capable of taking ropes and tying these rudimentary knots. And the idea, potentially, is that, okay, well, either they figured it out themselves, in which they're cognitively capable enough to figure it out themselves, or maybe they learned it from humans, from anatomically archaic humans. which would be equally as cool in a different direction, because that suggests more of like a cooperation. It's more likely that it's cooperation.
Yeah, they sort of get put to the side and are like, right, you know, Homo sapien sapien, we were social, Neanderthals weren't. They had their own wee tribes, we traded, we survived, we learned from each other, that's why we're better. They were stupid, big brows, they were just gorilla men, you know, and they sort of just get pushed off to the side, like.
Yeah, it's we don't give them nearly enough credit, in my opinion. I mean, Neanderthals, I'm very much against. I am of the opinion that they are probably their own species rather than a subspecies of Homo sapiens. But that's kind of being kicked around, and until we get more kind of genetic work done on that, I don't think we can necessarily say. And species are somewhat arbitrary, anyways. I'm more morphologic, so I'm like, they lack chins, you know, they've got this big occipital bun. To me, that seems like a morphologic novelty, maybe indicative of their own species. Who knows? I certainly can't say for certain, and I'm not an authority on the subject. But you're right, we don't give them nearly as much credit. We depict them as these like big, brutish, boorish, you know, animals, when in reality they were very much doing their own thing.
Yeah, they just looked a wee bit, you know, they were bigger and stronger, because at the end of the day, you know, we're all Homo sapiens, so we're like, right, that particular person, we don't have a genetic memory, we can only think back to what we've seen, to what we've experienced, and even before the television and things like that, you know, if you want to climb a mountain, you're going to have to kill a bear and put a skin on, you know, we have the intelligence to, you know, bundle up and get warm. If you're going somewhere really hot, we have the intelligence to put mud on our skin and things like that, and use them, and you know. But back in them days, environmentally, with them extreme environments, it was more natural selection, and your body had to adapt, because you couldn't find this and you couldn't find that. Your body had to adapt.
Yeah, and it's interesting where that line falls with the Neanderthals, because some people have suggested that one of the big lines between Neanderthals and sapiens, Homo sapiens, was the ability to master long-distance weapons. You know, because if you, and one of the reasons why this is suggested is because Neanderthals, we don't find any long-range weapons with them. Maybe we have in like the past couple months. To my knowledge, we haven't. But we find a lot of blunt force injuries, healed injuries on Neanderthals, suggesting that these guys were like, there's a boar, I want to kill that boar, let's all rush it and beat it to death with sticks and clubs, and, you know, these tools that we have that are great up close. But obviously the safer route would be, if you're, you know, Homo sapiens, to be like, well, maybe we can throw something at it instead of getting close to those tusks.
Well, again, it goes down to the time and sort of smashing the young earth creationism out the fucking window, because it can't be, it's, you know, if we are small and we are fast, then we want to get faster. If we are big and strong, we want to get stronger, because it'll help in the situation, you know, in the environment. Obviously, I'm broad brushing it, but you know, and it does help accentuate them particular things, driving it down that line. So you become faster, you become smarter. Our brains get bigger, our muscles get smaller, because we think more. You know, I always find it funny. I thought it was great. The first time that I threw a ball, my wee girl's only 3.5, and the first time that I threw a ball at her and she could reach out and actually catch it, first time, perfect, no messing around, you know, in a row, and continue to do this. In my head, I know it's strange, but I'm seeing that parabolic rate. I'm seeing the graph, you know, and I'm seeing the mathematical formula, and I'm knowing that my wee girl has now got to the point where she can put her hand out and catch that ball without having to look or whatever like that, and our brains to take that giant leap to, you know, to do this high mathematics in her head without even thinking. It is a leap, and to watch her get to that stage is just fucking, to watch her brain develop is amazing, like.
One of the fun things, again, about like getting to know a lot of primatologists is that they often say the same thing. They're like, all right, I spend all my time looking at monkeys and other apes, and then when they have a kid, they're like, all of a sudden I start like analyzing my child and realizing that, you know, all of the little steps that they're making, you can see the gears turning as they start to figure things out, and consider the world around them. And, you know, humans get a lot of credit for being one of the smartest, very cognitively inclined primates. But what we don't get a lot of credit for, and I like to remind people of this a lot, is we have our own little niche in the physical realm that we really are one of the best at. We are the best throwers in the animal kingdom, and we're the best long distance primates. Maybe we're in the top 5 of the long distance runners, period. matched by the likes of, husky dogs, camels, weirdly enough, I believe ostriches.
Camels were weird, but ostriches weren't. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, it's a weird deal. Like, you get these animals that are all the animals that seem to be really good at long distance running. They're meant to be that way, like the huskies. Or they have these really awkward, gawky stances. Like, you think about a camel, and you don't think that a camel is going to be winning any marathons, but they're surprisingly very good at running, as are ostriches, and as are we.
I think the one that I seen was, well, not the one that I seen, a documentary, Royal Institution. I absolutely love the Royal Institution, and shout out to them for their Christmas lectures this year. It's the first year, I think, in 90 to 100 years that they actually have a black representative doing one of their Christmas lectures. So, yeah, definitely subscribe to the Royal Institute and follow. I can't even fucking remember his name, Jesus. Anyway, I digress. Watching a documentary on that, the best long-distance runner ever was the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh, really? I have never heard that. But listen, I'm not the dinosaur person. If you want to get a dinosaur person on here, I know some folks who would love to get on here and talk about dinosaurs for an hour.
Jack of all trades, master of none, you know.
Hey, listen, I am both terrified and fascinated by the idea that a T-Rex would be a good long-distance runner.
Their center bone, I think the way it was is your leg bone is generally made of three. Their two outer ones grew bigger and the middle one got squished, but the fact that it got squished, the two outer ones gave super strength and the middle one gave that actual shock absorbent.
Okay.
It's a Royal Institute, the Royal Institute of London documentary on the T-Rex. Definitely worth watching. Dave will find it because he's fucking the mod supreme. And he'll post it in the live chat, but I'll send you the link. Anyway, I'm rambling. Yeah. We're rambling on. Behind you, Erica, we have lots of stuff going on. Saber-toothed tiger. What's the one in grey? Is that, which would be to your back left?
Oh, over here?
Yep.
Yeah, this is that's just classic Australopithecus afarensis. That is your Lucy, your Australopithecine. I'm very steadily. It turns out buying skull replicas is not a cheap hobby. They're kind of expensive, but I'm hoping to get my ideal situation would be right behind me to have the human skull. This was actually the cheapest one because it's just a plastic mold, but would have to have sapiens, Homo erectus, the Australopithecus afarensis, Ardipithecus ramidus, and a chimpanzee, just to show a full range of kind of morphologic traits. But yeah, this one.
That sort of understands. Now it makes more sense when I sent you the thumbnail and you were like, "I love the thumbnail" because it's sort of you in the middle of all of that, like.
Yeah. This one is of actually Lucy, the specific specimen. I've gotten criticism before from people who are like, okay, if this, the colors and tan are really the only bits that we have, how can you extrapolate the rest of the skull? And the reason is because we have way more than just Lucy.
Yes, they're parts of Lucy. They are not parts of all the samples that we have.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. In fact, this model includes the axis and the atlas, the beginning of the vertebral column coming out the back. And the reason we know that it was bipedal is in part because we've got the likes of the Dakika child, which was fossilized with the vertebral column still partially attached to the skull. But yeah, you can look at Lucy and you can be like, okay, this face is somewhat human. The teeth are somewhat human. I'm being colloquial in my term usage here. Yeah. But we've got an itty bitty brain case, still a pretty prominent brow ridge up here. The zygomatics are much more angular than they would be in some of our later forms. And she's relatively prognathic. So I don't know if you can see that, but she's got kind of like a snout going on there. This is Australopithecus afarensis. Then you've got the ammonite, which is over there. That's just an ammonite replica. That's a rhesus macaque, if you can't see. And that's just a coyote that I found.
Yeah, I can say nothing. Growing up around the mountains, excuse me, when I went and did my Duke of Edinburgh, we took home a ram's head that we found up and left it in the art department, and they bleached it and cleaned it for drawings, and then we went back in and they fucking robbed it again. Like, it's up the stairs in the attic.
Oh my god.
It's so fragile. One of the horns, because they grow inside each other. You know, it's like sections on sections. You can actually take it off and then you can put it back on.
I think that's so cool. I love. I mean, a skull collection sounds creepy, but I do love I think they're so cool to look at.
Skulls are fantastic, and I don't know if it's the idea that when we look at it, we think brain, we think intelligence, and we think that. Another little trigger that I would have with creationists is they only use the skulls.
Oh my god, that drives me crazy too.
Yeah. Because you have to take into account the length of the arms, the stature of the feet, you know, the shape of the hips and things like that. As we grew, our hips grow and stuff, and there's so much of the body. Is the morphology, the shape, the way we look, you know, there's so much of it that changes. Yeah,
the pelvis is so key. The pelvis and the shape of the knee and the femoral head, those along with, of course, the feet, but those two, the ones I mentioned prior to the feet first, those are literally how we know that we're dealing with a bipedal animal, like almost before anything else. So that bullshit pelvis holds all your organs and stuff in. You don't want them falling out. You know, and you've got the valgus knee so that you can hold your weight directly underneath your body. The inline big toe, of course, is important. The rigidity of the midfoot needs to be taken into account. The length of the spine relative to the sort of pelvis and the length of the legs, because some of our early monkeys, they actually have a much longer trunk than we do. And they're not typically as habitually bipedal as some.
Yeah, the evolution of the trunk is just crazy.
It is. It really is.
As you said earlier, something that benefits them at one particular stage, right? We've done this, we're good, we're sorted, oh shit, the environment changed, we're stuck with it. And then again, it forces them down that route, and before you know it, your fucking nose is 6 foot away from you.
Yeah, oh my god, I know. It's funny to me too. I had a professor once who was like, looking at the shape of the human spine, if you were to actually like flatten it out in such a way that it doesn't look like a perfect S, you end up with a quadruped, right? Like the human spine is literally, if someone was like, an intelligent designer was like, what if I made this knuckle walking quadruped a biped instead?
Yeah, I know. As a 37-year-old man that falls asleep after work on the sofa, my back is not designed to be straight. You know, standing up, it definitely isn't.
Oh my gosh, and you know, it worked out for a lot of our ancestors because they weren't living as long as we do typically, and they were getting so much exercise so frequently that while there are indeed negatives with that, they're the muscles that made up their back and their trunk were much more kind of toned, I guess, because I have back problems too. I sit for way too long, and I've been I recently started training for a marathon, and I'm like,
seen that,
okay.
yeah.
I was like, I really am not liking that. I'm not liking this.
Well, I have to say, MOMMA Atheist in the chat has been, how do I say this really nicely, helping me eat more healthily. Not nagging in any way. And I weighed myself the other day for the first time in 3 months, and I've lost 16 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
So I was very chuffed with that. So, you know, at the end, it's fucking annoying to get healthy. It really is. We all love eating bad and doing these things. But, yeah, when we get to my age, you sort of fucking have to.
My whole deal was I was like, all right, I can barely run a mile without collapsing. And I was like, it's time for me to, you know, get in good shape, and, you know, maybe I can train myself to enjoy running, and then you've got a lifelong hobby that's, you know, good for you. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite to the point where I enjoy it, but I have been running approximately 4 miles a day, so I can now run a mile relatively comfortably. So that's
what you're going to do is you're going to change your DNA, and that's.
Well, the stupid part is because of genetic entropy, my kids, of course, are going to be worse off than me, degrading. That's just, you know, that's how that air catastrophe, which has totally been proven, by the way, of course.
Oh, speaking of catastrophes, did you get a new table?
A new table
from the crash whenever you were moving.
Oh my gosh, no, actually, so what happened with that was,
it was like, if I send you a message, you're like, I'm moving on Monday or I'm moving on the 5th, and if everything goes well, we'll get back. And like 2 days later, I see on Twitter, so everything crashed, table smashed.
Oh my god, no, yes, so my mom and I are driving with the U-Haul behind the truck, and, you know, I guess we're not sure if it was something we did, but we did hit like 6 potholes in a row, so it's possible it wasn't our fault. It probably was, though. All I know is 1 minute we're driving, and the next, like, the U-Haul's jackknifing up to the side of the truck, and we have to do an emergency stop. The U-Haul wedges up underneath the back of the truck, and my table was in like 8 pieces in the back of the U-Haul. And it was one of my favorite tables that had a marble top on it. No, I did not get a new table. What ended up happening is my fiance's brother came into town, and he was bored and hanging around the house, and I was like, look, I've got like a table in about 8 different pieces and a big thing of Gorilla Glue. If you want, you can try to put it back together. So the underside of the table is hideous, but it can bear weight. It's not that big. It's like that. It's like that big from marble top, and it's kind of like a tall, skinny table that you like display stuff on. But it is functional. It does work. So I'm maybe gonna bring that on stream sometime. I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to see the status of my team.
Well, what we will do, we've been going nearly an hour, I think. I haven't checked the time. What time is it? Yes, we've been going over an hour. Now, Erica, if you're up for it, if anyone wants to join, I will post the link in the chat again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny. Oh, that is absolutely ironic as hell that the StreamYard link ends in ARK.
Oh my god. Yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Oh, god. Yeah, you better be careful. You're going to summon Ken.
Oh, we don't know. We could send. I've got Standing for Truth Discord and stuff. We could send him some messages. Like, what were we sending? No, we're not. Right.
Oh,
well, there's the StreamYard link. If anyone wants to join. If we can get enough people, we'll maybe do an after party. And Erica, shill yourself. Let everybody know. Thank you very much for coming as well. This has been a really good chat, and I hope we can continue it on. But absolutely loving this. Just so you just shill yourself before I talk too much.
Oh my god. Yeah, Gutsick Gibbon on YouTube. It's spelled like it sounds. It's the picture of the little blue gibbon. That's me. I do videos semi-frequently. I'm hoping to get more frequent. I've got a couple of videos like lined up and ready to release, so I'm about to get on like a legitimate schedule, which feels really weird. But I'm excited for it because I'll be able to actually have content on like a regular basis. I'm getting into a routine. It's fantastic. Twitter, Gutsick_Gibbon. You can follow me there. I tweet funny stuff sometimes. Sometimes it's not funny. And let me think beyond that. I guess I have a Patreon. If you like what I do, you can become a patron. The patron perks are fine. You get shout outs in the credits, and if you happen to be like a crazy good patron, I think it's like my $35 tier. I'll draw you like an avatar if you're into that. What else? Anything else? I think that is it. You can shoot me an email at gutsickgibbon@gmail.com, all lowercase. And I'm usually pretty good about getting back to emails. I've been much worse at it over the past month or so, just because my life's been kind of wild, moving and all that kind of stuff. But I try my best. I do my best.
Well, I only do live content. My Patreon content, you know. Join Robbie's Patreon. Join MathPig's Patreon. I've got a website, and I'll put your name on my website. Patreons also get first dibs on access to wonderful guests. So if you're a Patreon and you have a question you want to ask any of my great guests, from Aaron Ra to Gutsick Gibbon to hopefully people in the future that I'm not going to mention because they haven't said yes yet, but you know, we do what we can. We appreciate the content. We really do. We appreciate the contribution, because it's, you know, without our Patreons, without the live viewers watching, you know, what the fuck are we doing? You know.
Oh, I know. That's really the truth. I mean,
if I send fucking Erica a message and I'm just some strange guy, she's like, "Here, do you want to come to a hangout and sit with me and talk for an hour?" She would get away the fuck.
I was like, when do I come? You know, it's actually normally I'm much faster at being able to get on shows like that, but you literally messaged me right when I was about to and I was like, it's going to be a minute. But then, yes, I love more than anything hopping on and having discussions about this kind of stuff.
We also do open panels on Thursday, as I mentioned to you just before, posting the ARC link, as I'm going to call it now, in the chat again for anyone who wants to join the after party.
Yeah, please do. Come on.
Oh no, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, you've totally... Oh no, I made the ARC joke and I've lost it again. Yes, Patreons, wonderful. Viewers, wonderful. Would be nothing without yous. You know, we'd be lost without you. It really is. Just a creepy guy asking some young girl to come talk to him.
Hey, hop on. Come on.
So,
a creepy guy and a random...
On that note, I will say, again, Erica, thank you very much. You're going to have to hit the subscribe button because I haven't scheduled the after party yet. Apologies loads for the audio at the start. It's all Dave's fault because he watched it when I did it the other night and told me it was perfect. So it's all Dave's fault. Other than that, Erica, we will out, and we will see you back in 10-15 minutes.
Absolutely. Perfect.